Welcome to Indian time again. Today we're going to talk about a couple of different subjects, and want to remind you our words for our place names for last week was simply Oichin, and before that it was Sintluputlam. Sintluputlam is at the bottom of Evro. Simply Oichin is in Evro, and today we're going to say our word is Sintlad Satna, or the full word Sintlad Satna, which means you're entering a forest, or you're talking about the tree line, and then you get to the edge of the tree line. That's Sintlad Satna. And some of these words, place names, have all come from our elders, and I guess the one of the Salish elders, Agnes Pokerjim Paul, who is 90 years old today, remembers that 3 families lived in the area during her childhood: Lhasa and Samuel and Kutle Hunsu, Sam Resurrection, and Madli Kuil Numla, which means Mary Red Raven. They were the people that lived in this area, and Agnes recalls that jump dances were held at the homes in the area. And also we have information from Pete Pierre, or Inius Pierre rather. So that is your place name for this show, Sintlat Sinatl. We all know that the fires are dying down, luckily for the rain that we had in the past couple of days. That's not to say that the rain or the fire season is completely over. We still have September and part of October, which we usually get fires in those months also. I understand that the restrictions have been lifted a little. I'm not sure. I think it was up to a level 3 now. But check with the forestry office before you run off into the woods or whatever you're going to do. I understand there are, a lot of as we all know, the fire put a stop to a lot of the people that make the forest as a living, and logging and cutting posts and poles. But there was a fire-related unemployment that was available for them for this one time. Also today and tomorrow there's a conference at the resort at Kotaknuk in Polson. And it's called the Honor of All, which focuses on child abuse, child abuse awareness. There's a lot of abuse of our children that we're not aware of, I guess, or what is child abuse. And this conference will cover some of that. Also, there's a statewide forum for parents of Indian children. It will be held the 7th, 8th, and 9th at the Salish Kootenai College, and that forum is dealing with our children's education, and how parents can be informed, what the parents' rights are, and all of those little things that we don't seem to get enough information of. And again, our subject today, we're going to talk about the A.R.P.A law. If you remember the last show, I had Marcia Cross, the director of the Preservation Office, was here, and we discussed some of the things that the Preservation Office did. And this week we're going to follow it up with A.R.P.A law, which is a part of protecting the resources that we have as people. And those are one of the subjects. The other subject we want to talk about on our next show after this we're going to go into some railroad issues, some of the things that affected the tribes and railroad. With that, I think I'll go on to September. Some of the things, dates in September that you need to remember, that on the 1st of September in 1880, Chihuahua School opened. A lot of our people went to that school. On August 30th through September 2nd, in 1882, tribal leaders opposed the right-of-way of the Northern Pacific Railroad through the reservation during the negotiations that were being held in St. Ignatius by the United States officials. The government forced it through anyway, and that's why we want to talk a little bit about the railroad at our next show. With that, I think I want to introduce my guest for today, and also a part of the Preservation Office. He's, I guess he's what you would call a GIS mapping specialist, and to map and to do inventory on cultural resources on and off the reservation. Tim Ryan has been with working for the Preservation Office since 1996. He was previously, before that, he was working for the Ag Lands at Department of Lands division over at the complex. So in permitting, but right now he's working for the Preservation Office, and I guess I'll have you have him talk a little bit about the A.R.P.A law and what it means, and whatever else he has to share with that. So with that, I'd like to introduce my guest for today, Tim Ryan.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, thanks for inviting me here today, Tony, and speaking on this. It's a great opportunity to be able to tell the public about what the tribe is doing, especially the preservation efforts. As Tony said, my job is dealing with GIS computer technologies and mapping out all the sites, all the cultural resources that are significant to our tribal people. These resources, cultural resources, are defined by anything that a race of people use or utilize on the land or visit on the earth to perpetuate their livelihood. Cultural resources involves everything from plant gathering areas to burial sites, old campsites, trails, the fish, the wildlife is very important. Those are all cultural resources that our people used and utilized in a very respectful way to help their livelihood and to carry them as to where they are now. We use quite a few different tools for the protection of our resources. One tool, of course, is the computer system. Now, the computer system is what we map out all of our resources, and with this inventory of these resources, we can then protect those resources. We know where they're at, we know how to address them, we know what to protect when a house is going to be built, a road is going to be built in this area. We go out, we survey, we assess what is out there, and we help to protect those resources. Other tools are the A.R.P.A law, as Tony had mentioned here. Now, A.R.P.A is an acronym for Archaeological Resource Protection Act. It's a federal law that was enacted in 1979 to protect cultural resources. Cultural resources, tribal cultural resources, and non-tribal cultural resources. And A.R.P.A as being one of those tools that we can use to help prosecute and to prevent the looting or the desecration of cultural resources. The certain violations like pictograph sites, paintings on rocks, they are constantly being vandalized with spray paint, people carving their names in them. We want to get a handle on that and try to prevent that. Other desecrations are the actual digging of a burial, taking those funerary objects, taking those bones, and actually selling them. There's old campsites that are continually people are visiting and digging at. We have evidence of this desecration on the reservation and off the reservation. There are people out there that are making money off of artifacts, which is sad because these are the cultural resources of our tribal people. And I also want to stress that it's not just tribal people, the non-tribal people's resources also. You have old cabins, barns out there that people think they can just go and take the barn wood off and use it for something else. Well, that's just an example, a small example of what we're all up against, is that there is a lot of this looting and desecration of these sites and resources out there at this present time. If you look on the internet, you will see there are certain people advertising the sale of Native American artifacts. And part of my responsibilities are to monitor and to watch these sites and to investigate some of those sites to see who's trading those artifacts, who's making money on those artifacts, and what are they doing, how are they being portrayed. Now all of this looting, we want to say looting or theft of these cultural resources is of a great concern, of course, to our tribal people. They're robbing us, our tribal people, of our heritage and of our culture. These signs, these remnants of our past that are still on the land is what defines us and helps to define us to who we are and gives us that tie to the earth and to the resources that the great earth has given us. My responsibilities with preservation is to be out there, survey, and inventory these resources so that we do know that's out there, so that someone is out there looting or taking these, digging a site, we can follow up on it. Now, A.R.P.A has a lot of protocol to it. This protocol is what we would follow in helping us to prosecute individuals that are violating A.R.P.A law, that are out there desecrating and taking from our tribal culture. This law has educated us to the proper way of handling a looted site. Say we come upon a burial that someone had dug up. We usually call the law enforcement in also, because we actually consider these sites as being a crime scene. So everything has to go just as an investigation of a crime scene goes. All evidence has to be identified. All evidence has to be collected in a very thorough and processed way. Because in the court of law, once we have to present this evidence against whoever the violator was, we have to make sure that that'll stand up in the court of law. The A.R.P.A laws also help us identify those individuals that may be out there looting, identifies what the potential problem is with trying to protect these sites. Certain tools that we have been informed about that we can apply to the woods to help us to either monitor or to follow up on who is violating these our sites, our cultural sites.
Okay, Tim, that sounds very interesting on a lot of things. But let's take a short break here, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up with what we have to share here and offer on the A.R.P.A law.
I really got wasted last night. I think I had a really good time with Tom. I just don't remember.
I've done that one before.
I hope they understand they have our future in their hands. If you choose to be sexually active, be safe, don't risk your life for a good time now. Native American women are fast becoming infected with STD and AIDS.
Welcome back. Remember the word for the day, the place name, Today is Sinhlaatsanaalq. Again, we're here with Tim Ryan from the Preservation Office talking about the A.R.P.A laws that affect, in some ways, help tribal people throughout the country. Tim, earlier you talked about the selling of these funerary items and bones and things. What kind of people buy these kind of, sacred items?
Tony, they come from all walks of life. We have individuals out there that, unemployed people, you have employed people. There was a report over in Spokane at one of these lakes that a county prosecutor had gotten involved with he or she was basically going along beaches and picking up artifacts. So we've got a variety of people. There's also some very dangerous individuals out there too. They make a serious business out of collecting artifacts. Of course, as we all know, we've heard about the fires in Mesa Verde. Those fires have exposed some of the sites, and they are experiencing people out on the land looking for artifacts and certain cultural features that are out in the land there. So it's what some of these people are doing too. They're involved with the drug trade. They will collect these artifacts and they'll actually sell them or trade to other individuals that are within the drug trade also. That's one area that is very serious because they do carry firearms with them too. We are trained not to approach these individuals. If we do see some individuals out there with suspicious activity and we suspect that they are looting, we'll be very cautious to confront them face to face because they could have some firearms on them or they could get very unruly. It's a very cautious situation. We are trained to monitor the situation and not interact with that individual. We will let law enforcement deal with that, which I would have to advise anyone else to do that also, is to contact the law enforcement first off on any of that. The law enforcement then contacts us and we can try to evaluate the situation.
So it's hard to say who's out there looting. It's just because it comes from all walks of life, from the very poor to the very rich. I understand from what I'm hearing, and so I guess when you see somebody out there walking around along the river or whatever, you might think that it's someone just out for a stroll, but actually looking for artifacts.
Right, correct. I should note too, Tony, that there is, in the past history, there's been an acceptance of collecting arrowheads and artifacts. That's because the notion of, well, my dad used to do it, my folks used to do it, so now I do it, and it was accepted. But it's really not accepted these days. So there has been certain individuals are innocent to the laws as to what is required of them not to be taking from the land. And this is part of our effort to communicate to the public that it isn't right to pick up these artifacts and take them home with you because they're very special where they're at. And other individuals may comment on that at a later date. But right now, there is laws to protect the collecting of artifacts on the land. And I think this is a great opportunity to get the word out to everyone. I mean, on the reservation here, we have people who are actively collecting along the rivers and lakes, and we would like to stop that in any way that we could, although we do realize that some people felt that it was okay. And now we're getting to the point where we want to communicate that that's not okay, and that we will follow up on certain violations like that.
I know in the past there has been stories I've heard that Boy Scouts organizations actually go out along the lakeshore and dig for arrowheads, and not realizing that it was against the law.
That's correct.
The other thing, I guess, is what kind of training does your program get to deal with these kinds of things?
Well, first off, some of our basic training is identification of cultural resources, and a lot of that training will come from our elders and our individuals like that would help us to identify those cultural resources. Also, so once we can identify those cultural resources, we can identify that they are cultural resources and map and inventory them. And then for the protection of these resources, like the A.R.P.A training that we got, I had arranged to have these individuals that are noted nationwide for their instruction in the A.R.P.A laws. And at the SKC College here, we hosted this training for them. And we got involved, our tribal police, our tribal fish and game, our museum curation individuals from the People's Center who deal with certain artifacts. We also got some of our land managers, like forestry individuals, involved with this because they are on the land and they see certain things, and they would be able to help. There'd be extra eyes out there that would help us to identify any kind of violations that might be going on there. So this class was very, very informative. It was a week-long class. There are certain classes structured for more of the land managers, preservation staff like us, and then there's the more intense training for our law enforcement individuals. They'll go through a 40-hour course, or better sometimes, in proper techniques of gathering the evidence, in identifying individuals, and some of the investigative techniques that they use to follow up on violations like that.
Has there been any, in your job in mapping and using GIS system on our own reservation here?
Violations, yes. When we are doing our field surveys, going out and identifying these resources, we come upon areas that people have dug. Some of these areas, there has been more than 50 to 200 to 300 holes dug. These are shovel holes that people are looking for artifacts. They may have found something on the surface and they collected that, and then they dug underneath that thinking there'd be more artifacts under the surface. That's a grave violation there when they start digging. Because they could be running into burials and things like that, which...
So what kind of, you said the law enforcement was involved in here. Have they been having a lot of training, or is this just getting started here?
It's basically getting started here. This law is helping to bring the awareness of the situation also, the major situation that I don't think people really realize that there is a problem out there with looting sites. And this training had brought the awareness to our tribal police, our law enforcement individuals, that they're conscious of it and they're ready to act when it will happen. We are putting together a A.R.P.A task force. This A.R.P.A task force involves people from our preservation office, the law enforcement people, other land managers, division lands, forestry people. We will be getting them involved so that when there is a violation of any of these cultural resources, we have a protocol, a first response type of thing that we can do to get out there and investigate this site.
What kind of, or at what level does the federal people come in? Do they come at the beginning or at a later time?
Well, they come in right at the beginning. We can bring in, since our government-to-government relationship, we can bring in FBI agents, we can bring in the top individuals to investigate this. Our first response, though, is our local people, and they need to be trained to do the right thing, so that if it's a more serious situation than our local people can handle, the FBI can handle it, and we're giving them all the proper evidence in the proper form so that they can prosecute these individuals.
So right now, even without the lack of training, a lot of training, if a person is to come across someone that looks suspicious or whatever, to notify your office first, or?
Actually, we would probably notify the police, tribal police or tribal fish and game first off. They are instructed then to contact the preservation individuals, and there are certain individuals in our office, me and a few others, that would follow up on this. We would go with the police officers out to the site and help them to gather that evidence and properly investigate the scene so that we can have a better prosecution down in the future.
Okay, Tim, we're running out of time here. Is there anything that you'd like to add more to what we discussed here today?
I think what I really want to say is to bring the awareness to our people out there that the situation is very serious and that it is robbing from not only the Indian cultures, but also from the non-Indian cultures that reside on the reservation and off the reservation. So it's an important issue that everyone should be conscious of, and we'd like to see some eyes out there, more eyes, more help to identify who might be doing these violations that are very grave violations. So I guess what I really want to portray is that the tribes are serious about protecting these cultural resources, tribal and non-tribal, and that we will follow up on any violations.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes, thank you, Tony.
So I see that, I guess, first of all, we need to know, first of all, I would think we need to know our own tribal laws, our tribal culture, and the role that our culture plays in our existence, and why we see why it's important to protect these sites, these areas, because our existence depends on it. It establishes who we are, where we're from, and in the long run, it's going to help us in future court cases and whatever else that we need to do. So with that, there's a lot more to talk about, but I'd like to thank Tim again for allowing us to be part of here, and we'll cut here. Thank you. The word again, I forgot. Don't forget the word of the day is that's the area in the Shalai area, just north of Shalai, is Sinhlat Sinhlat. Now you have 3 place names. And with that, I will say, and we'll see you at our next show.